I kind of compare them to like, when you get a new little puppy, they kind of pee everywhere, like a new Christian's kind of like one of those, they're just sharing with everybody.
Yeah, they're so excited.
It's the greatest thing. And so she was like, she accepted Jesus when she was 4.
Yeah.
This is the last thing that she wanted to do was go to Africa.
I appreciate your excitement, but let's dial it down just
So we want to dial it down and we want to pause.
So
what do we say?
Exactly.
Let's pray about it.
Comedian Mickey Bell here for another edition of Get Over It, the podcast where we are telling you about successful people who have had some major obstacles they've had to overcome. You may know them as household names, but you may not know the stories that got them there. Such is the case for the individual we're going to be talking today. What do you take when you take a white boy, take him from Detroit, send him to Africa, and he ends up in Nashville? Well, you end up with Todd Smith of the award-winning SELAH. He's joining us today, and I cannot wait for you to hear his story. Get ready. It's time to get over it. When I was struggling with my mental health, one of the biggest obstacles I had to overcome was being willing to talk to someone. And for some of you, you may be in that same state where you don't want to leave your home. You don't trust anyone in your community that you can talk with. I want to introduce you to BetterHelp. They have licensed therapists that is able to take you and actually talk to you via Zoom so you can do it from the comfort of your own home. These are licensed therapists. You can talk about faith or you cannot talk about faith. It doesn't matter. They're going to have something specific just for you. If you would like to receive a 10% discount for your first initial call, all you got to do is check out BetterHelp in the show notes below. Todd, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you,
so
Mickey.
Glad
Thanks
to
for
have
having
you
me
here, man. First of all, I know a lot of people mess up your group's name, and I just wanted to go ahead and get this out in the open. It's SELAH.
It is SELAH.
Not SELAH.
Not SELAH. Not Sheila.
Not Sheila.
Shellac.
No.
We've been called all of those.
I was about to ask you, what all have you been called?
SELAH, Sheila. They usually think my sister used to be in the group, so they thought Nicole was Sheila, and I don't know what they thought Al and I were. And then Amy, she was SELAH.
Yeah. So when you came up with that name, I know it's biblical. I know it's in the Bible a couple of times in Psalms. But when you came up with the name, did you have any idea that it would be hard for people to pronounce? Or
no, and it wasn't our first option. We're kind of going by our names, and our booking agent was like, "We can't do that. You got to have a name." So we came up with like 40 names. They all sounded horrible. And Alan's roommate, we were just out of college, and so his roommate was reading the funnies section of his local Texas paper, and he saw the word SELAH in the comic section, and he was like, I think he said SELAH. He's like, "What about SELAH?" So Alan wrote it down, and we finally, when we narrowed it down like a couple weeks later, I was like, okay, well, let's do SELAH instead of SELAH because it sounds a little more masculine than SELAH. And it turns out in Hebrew it is more like Selah.
Yeah. So you did it based upon the cartoon section, not the biblical perspective.
There was no
cloud
that just kind of came in. Now, what was interesting is once we looked at the meaning of it, to lift the voices in praise, they don't really know what it means, but there's like 40 possible connotations. So it's like to lift the voices in praise, to pause and reflect, to stop and think about it.
Here's how that meeting went. What does it mean? Oh, it means that. Okay, we'll go with that. Had no idea.
Yeah. So it was, and then it fit perfectly. So
I know it just a lot of people, every time they see it, I hear so many different pronunciations. And I thought, okay, I want to make sure that I get it correct.
And we get called all of them. So I appreciate you, saying
I did my
right
research. I did my research. What was the Hebrew? But no, it's so good. Now looking at you, and I'm not judging at all, but the people that are watching, when I tell people you're from Africa, may throw a few people.
Yeah.
May the red beard that's going on may throw a were you born in that? No, you were born in Detroit.
I was born in born in Detroit. Born in Michigan.
Then you went over. So talk to me a little bit of why we're saying you're from Africa.
Yeah. So my grandparents goes way back to the 30s. My grandpa got saved later in life, became a believer in Jesus later in life, and it was the greatest thing he'd ever heard. And had lost his first wife to a brain tumor, was depressed, and this lady came in. He was an oral surgeon, came in and got her teeth cleaned, and her name was Flossie. I kid you not. And she had been asked by his nurses and staff, would you come and share about Jesus? He is hopeless.
Wow.
And his wife, his first wife, on her deathbed, she said, his name was Laban. She said, Laban, I found Jesus. He is who we've been looking for. You need to go find him.
Come on.
Yeah. So then she passed away. Flossie comes in, shares the gospel, and she ran a small little chapel in Detroit. And so he came to, she invited him, and she shared the gospel. And he was so blown away by this grace and this love that God could have for him.
Yeah.
And so it just became, Jesus became the greatest thing. And so my dad's always joked that he had a captive audience because he was a dentist and he would share with everybody in that chair, you know?
You're stuck. Yeah.
Do you want this teeth pulled?
Exactly.
But
you want laughing glass or
right.
laughing gas. Let me share the
Here you
gospel
go.
first and you can have it.
And so she wrote to her sister, who was in Pennsylvania, and which was my grandma, and she had a beautiful voice, and wrote to her and said, hey, this chapel's growing. Could you help me lead worship? And by the way, there's this young doctor. I think he'd be perfect for you. And my grandma was one of 16 kids.
Goodness.
My great-grandfather was an alcoholic, very abusive, and so she had no desire to get married whatsoever. So she writes back to my aunt, my great-aunt. She said, I prayed about it. I believe I'm supposed to come and help lead worship, but if that guy's so great, you marry him yourself. And so she moves up to Detroit, and the first time she sang, that was it. He was like, I'm marrying her. And so like within a month, they were engaged, and a month after that, they were married. And then he starts talking about Africa, and a lot of people were doing mission work, in particular in Congo. It was Zaire when I moved there, but Congo. And so he talked to her about going to Congo and being a missionary. And I kind of compare him to, like, you know, when you get a new little puppy, they kind of pee everywhere, you know, like a new Christian's kind of like one of those, they're just sharing with everybody.
Yeah, they're so excited.
It's the greatest thing. And so she was like, you know, she accepted Jesus when she was 4.
Yeah.
This is the last thing that she wanted to do was go to Africa.
I appreciate your excitement, but let's dial it down just
So we want to dial it down and we want to pause.
So
what do we say?
Exactly.
Let's pray about it. So she was like, let's pray about it.
A 40-day fast. That's what we need.
A 2-year fast. And after about 2 months, he still had the same passion and the same drive. And apparently, I don't know if this is true, but he had 10,000 patients on his Rolodex. I don't know if that's possible, but supposedly that was it. So when he sold his practice, he prayed for 10,000 souls in Africa.
Wow.
So they eventually moved. My uncle was born out there. My dad was born out there. They started 3 mission stations. And they were there for about 15 years before he fell while building a house and passed away. But a month before he did that, he wrote in his diary how he'd seen his 10,000th soul. And just incredible stories of people that were doing child sacrifice. And when he shared about how God sacrificed his son, so you no longer have to do that, the men were weeping. They were like, it was like this weight was lifted off of them. And the idea that God would love them that much to do this to where they no longer had to do these horrible things to their kids. They didn't want to sacrifice their kids, but that's how they believed they would be at one with the gods. And so the idea that God would love them that much, it was, and like this whole village, it was the largest village in the area where I eventually grew up, almost overnight. Everyone became followers of Jesus.
Oh,
and
what a story.
Yeah, so it was, Dad was 11 when my grandpa passed, and so never really wanted to go back to Africa. Eventually went to Bible school, married my mother, and when my mom started falling in love with him, she's a city girl, you know, she's from Pontiac, Detroit area, and she started to pray because she was like, Lord, I'm falling in love with this man. I know he grew up in Congo. I don't ever want to go to Congo. I don't ever want to live there. I don't want to be there. I don't want to be a missionary. I want to live here. And so for the first 14 years, they were in church ministry. And then when I was 5, I have 2 older sisters, Sean and Nicole. And then I have a younger brother who later was born in Africa. But so you can see where the story's going. But I was 5, and it's the winter of 1977, which was a horrible winter in Michigan, a lot of snow. Our house catches on fire. My dad is in California. He was a singer, had done several independent projects and a record with Zondervan. And so he's over there. I'm 5 years old or 4 or 5 years old. The house just burns down within minutes. And several days later, my dad finds out from my aunt that we're all okay. And he was just grateful he wasn't coming home to bodies. And so he said that on the drive back, it took about 3 days for him to finally get a hold of my mom.
Wow.
But on the drive back, he felt like the Holy Spirit said, what about Congo? What about the work that your parents started? They always wanted to start a Bible school so they could train the nationals to become evangelists and pastors. And so he gets on the phone with my mom, and she's in tears, and she's like, well, Jim, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And he goes, well, Nancy, I think God's calling us to go to Congo. And she's like, are you crazy? Like the house is still smoldering and you want to go to Africa? Are you kidding me? And credit to my mom, who never, like, oh, it'd be so amazing. Never wanted to do it. None of that. But she said, let me pray about it. And after a week, she felt in her heart and in her spirit, this is what we're supposed to do. And
probably not the perfect time to unload that news, to the mom.
No.
I'm sitting here with the kids.
I'm sitting here with the kids.
I have no house.
I have no house.
Sure. Let's just pack up and go to
Let's go to Africa. And so the next year, we ended up going out there.
Wow.
So it was 4 when the house burned down. I was 5 when we moved. And then we lived there for 8 years.
My goodness.
And they started a Bible college, and still have that college, still have a radio station, and SELAH's #1 every week in Africa.
In fact, SELAH's the only one they're playing, is what I heard.
When COVID hit, they unfortunately everything shut down there too, and so people, all they could do was listen to their radios, and so that station, the radio station, became the church for the people in that area, and it reaches a potential of about 8 million people there. So, so lived there from 5 to 13. Moved back to Michigan, went to high school there, and then found out about Belmont University here in Nashville, Tennessee, and moved down, and then started doing studio work with so many different musicians and session players who are players now. They weren't back then, and there was this guy who had a great tenor voice named Alan Hall, and he eventually said, "Hey man, could we go down to the practice rooms? I'm a little stressed out by exams and." Just sing some hymns. And so we'd go down and we'd do some hymns. And I was like, oh my word, this guy's an unbelievable piano player. And then he asked if I'd help lead worship at his church. And that happened a couple times. And then the pastor was like, hey, I'm about to become the pastor officially. He had kind of been the interim.
Gotcha.
Would you guys do a concert just to in celebration of that? And I didn't want to sing all by myself. So I wrote my sister in, and we put on a concert, and then another one. And then we did this youth event in Indiana. And my mom comes to it, and I remember, because we were primarily we didn't have time to write stuff, so we just picked hymns, choruses, songs from Africa, you name it.
Anything with public domain.
Yes. Exactly
so we didn't have to pay royalties.
That's exactly
public domain.
So we go and sing at this youth group, and I remember thinking, why do we agree to sing a bunch of hymns for teenagers? Like, this is going to be awful. Yeah. And it ended up being this amazing night, and they asked us to do His Eyes on the Sparrow for a second time. They'd never heard it, and this kid is 16. He's like, man, that It Is Well song, it's really good. Did you guys write that? And so it was...
Whoa, come out. That sounded like a guy from California. That did not sound like a guy from Indiana.
I guess true.
That sound, dude.
It's amazing.
So was he from California or was he from Indiana? Because
I think he was Indiana.
That was a surfer dude listening to.
And so after that concert, we my mom was like, man, there's something special here. So she knew before we did.
Yeah.
I think that's one of those things too. Sometimes there's outside voices that believe in you, that say, hey, there's something here. I knew I wanted to be a singer. My sister knew she wanted to be a singer. Alan wanted to be in country music, and Nicole wanted to be a pop artist, and I was going to be a rock guy. But all that to say, my mom was like, you need to do something with this. And my other grandpa had just passed away. My mom's dad, he was elderly. And so I was like, Mom, we don't have money, and we can't make a record. And she was like, I'll pay for it, with Grandpa's money. And Alan was like, hey, my roommate, he's interning at this studio, and they got this new program called Pro Tools. And so Jason was one of the first people to use Pro Tools in Nashville, actually. And so we went in, and on Father's Day of 1997, we recorded first album in 2 weeks. And he erased our first version of His Eyes on the Sparrow. So it's somewhere out there. But we released
in a cloud.
In a cloud. And my sister, Nicole, she was signed with Curb Records as a solo artist already. But she had to turn the project in. And Mike is one of those people that actually listens to the music. If it moves him, he will, move forward with something. Right. So again, he saw something that we didn't, because I was moving back up to Detroit to go to Bible college. Nicole was going to work on her pop album, and Alan was working on doing country sessions and other jobs and stuff like that. And so I had to go back to Africa because our mission station had been pillaged. If you remember the Hutus and the Tutsis and everything that happened in Rwanda, it spilled over into Congo, which borders it, and then came all the way over to the west side where we lived. And there wasn't like the mass slaughtering, but they came in and they just took everything.
Goodness.
So we went back to see how our people were doing and to let them know that, we're here, we're going to continue to support the ministry. And then when I came back, my mom was like, hey, Nicole called. You should give her a call back. So I call her and she's like, hey, Mr. Curb listened to our project and he wants to sign us to a record deal. Like, he wants me to keep doing my pop thing, but he said, there's something special with your brother and with Alan.
Wow.
And, you need to go ahead and do that. So that's how SELAH started.
Not a TikTok sensation, nothing on YouTube.
It's a slow talk is what we are, man. It's like this. Just
that would have been
slow and
we
steady.
were MySpace famous.
Yes.
And but no, that is so cool. The fact that you actually had a record exec that was moved, even though he's in all the other genres, that he was moved by something that was inspirational.
Yeah.
That is so
cool.
cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
So take me back. You were in Africa until you were about 13, you said.
Yeah.
So what kind of effect did that have on you when you got back, going to school, becoming a teenager? What kind of effect did it have being over there and now being in America?
Yeah, I think so. There's several different things. One, I had a much more, as far as a worldview of just how the world works, I think a much more advanced view of that, than the average kid, and just seeing different cultures. Where it was really difficult was I was a fish out of water when I came back to the States because I didn't know the slang. I didn't know what was cool. I didn't dress cool. You're making brand new friends, but from a completely different culture. And for the first semester of school, I hated it. I
can imagine.
I was like, I want to go back to Africa. We were supposed to be there for one more year, but my oldest sister, Shauna, graduated, and we'd all gone to boarding school. I went to boarding school for my 6th and 7th grade year, which I loved, and I chose to do that. But my sister had gone for her 10th, 11th, and 12th grade year, and Mom didn't want to be so far away now that she was going to college.
Yeah.
So when they came back to get her set in the summer, all my two sisters and my mom decided that, hey, we're gonna live here.
Oh, wow.
And I wasn't ready for that.
Right.
So I didn't have any friends and was so awkward. And so it was just lonely. I would cry. I had soccer, fortunately, because that was I grew up playing that, eventually played that at Belmont University too. But I didn't know what I was doing. And there was a teacher who was my civics teacher and he was also a soccer coach and just took a liking to me.
Yeah.
And at one point we were playing indoor and he's like, Todd, how are you doing? I was like, I'm not doing great. I don't know who I am. I don't know how to connect with people. I don't know how to make friends. And he was like, quit trying to be everybody for everybody. He's like, just
that's good.
Be who you are. Just be consistent. Take time, and eventually you're going to, kind of find out who you are, and then also make friends. But don't try to like be this and then be this person and be that. And after the second semester, like something switched, and then suddenly I was, really able to connect, and then ended up loving that school.
Yeah,
so
that is so cool, so cool. And then SELAH gets this record deal, and y'all are like on like gangbusters. I mean, y'all are hitting it. And
yeah, well, at first though, it was like a turtle start. Like we got the offer. It took a year to negotiate the contract. And the album was done. We'd finished the album, and credit to Mike, he didn't come in. A lot of times, what Mike.
So he was trying to take the one that you did with Pro Tools.
Yes.
Oh, he was actually taking. He was taking that. You're not recording another.
We're
one.
not recording
Gotcha.
a new one. And he said, we're going to keep it as it is. But if you want to add strings to anything, if you want to add percussion to anything, you have a budget. but he let us make the decision. So we ended up adding strings to 3 songs, drums to a Larry Norman song called Sweet Song of Salvation, and I think guitar to a couple things, and that was it. And then so the album's done. It takes us a year to sign the contract. Then they were in the middle of negotiations with their distributor. Oh my goodness. So that was another year. So it didn't come out till 99. And then when they released it, it ended up winning the Dove Award for Inspirational Album of the Year, which was their first Dove Award and obviously our first one. And we were up against Charlotte Church. And I don't know if anyone remembers her, but she was like a teen classical superstar, you know. And the GMA flew her in to perform, and so we were like, "Oh, we're not winning this award. There's no." They've flown her in like, and then when they called our names, my mom like elbowed me, and she's like, "That's you guys. You won," you know. And I was like, "No way, we won." So
that's so cool. So the 2 years you're waiting on the project, are y'all traveling and singing during that time? What are you doing?
We were doing some, but I was in Bible school.
Okay.
So it's funny how things happen. When I was at Belmont University, so many talented musicians, singers, songwriters. And as a singer, I've always been very confident in that. But I was pretty cocky, I think, just like, I know what I'm doing. And I had 3 potential record deal offers as a solo artist, or so I thought. And after I graduated, everything fell through.
Oh, wow.
And I'd been waiting tables and parking cars as everybody does. But I continued just parking the cars and just going, man, you know what? My music is my idol. Like, it is my identity. It's one thing to be passionate and about something and for it to be so important, but when it becomes your God, you know, it becomes the most important thing. You lose perspective on everything else. And so for me, there was just a way of just saying to God, I want to put you first. I know I need to put you first. I don't necessarily want to put you first, but I know I need to. And to show you that, I'm going to move out of Nashville, which is my security blanket, and I'm going to do 3 things I swore I'd never do. I will never move back to Detroit, which I did. I will never live with my parents again, which I did. And I'm not going to go to the rinky-dink Bible college in Detroit that they went to, and did all 3 of those things. And
the rinky-dink Bible college is sponsoring this podcast.
well, they're not existent, so you're not going to get any money.
They're sponsoring this podcast, so we'd like for you to go to the rinky-dink Bible college that's being recommended here today.
It was called William Tyndale Bible College, and they had and it's where my parents went. It was a great school, and they had a program. If you already had a degree, I had a degree in business, you could get a 2-year degree from them. And it was 2 great years.
So good.
I had a professor there who was just fantastic and just made you think. And so there's a song I wrote for our Christmas album called Mystery that was inspired by one of his classes. And just time to really dive in, you know, to the Word and just study it more. And then during that time, we were, you know, you're thinking about things and we're trying to figure out a name and all that stuff. So over those 2 years.
And you're waiting on the project to come out.
Yeah.
Because it still hasn't come out. And y'all, at that time, you probably don't even have a date of knowing when it's going to happen.
No.
So it's still the unknown.
Yeah, still unknown. But I was able to graduate, and then right after that, we hit the road with Third Day, which was interesting because we're inspirational, piano vocal.
That's a mixture, buddy.
And Mac invited us out because he loved Nicole's voice, and they had 3 rock bands the tour before, and it was a battle of the bands. Yeah. And so he was like, I want a huge variety. So we had our 15 minutes, and then there was another group that was like a coffee house. They were from Seattle, called 5 O'Clock People, and then Third Day. And we hit the road hard. It's the roughest tour I've ever done. Like, it was 8-hour, 9-hour days.
So are we talking bus back then, or
but we had a rent-a-wreck. We had a mobile home that we rented from a company here called Rent-a-Wreck. And the shocks broke in the first week. And we had a road manager, but then I had to drive too, you know, because it was
so many hours.
So many hours. So Alan had the back room, but when the shocks broke, it was like a bouncing trampoline. So he would just bounce up and down. The table turned into a bed. So Nicole slept on that, and then I slept above. But it sounded like you were about to crash into somebody, so it was so hard to sleep.
And they're so top.
Yes,
heavy.
So top heavy.
Waving back and forth.
Yeah. So we would sometimes we got to the point where we couldn't drive through the night anymore. We would just stay in the hotel of the driver's rooms, And then we'd wake up early and then we'd drive 8 hours the next day, barely get there, set up the keyboard, do our 15 minutes, go to the merch table. Nobody cares. You know, they don't want to see you.
You're not third day.
No, we were the, hey, do you know where the bathroom is? You know, that kind of thing. Like we were in Peoria, Illinois for our second show. And the lady who was helping us really wanted to be at the third day table and the merch. And so once we got to where she was,
she's so upset.
She was like, I'm going to go help third day. It looks like they need more help. Well, she must have like left at some other point too, because we got merch stolen from us. So we made, and for people who don't know, when you're in the opening band, unless you're a big act, you're probably paying to be on the tour.
Yes.
So we were paying $500 per show to be on the tour. The label's doing that, and then they're recouping it through your royalties.
Through your sales,
And then we got a $20 per diem each. So we're making $20 at each show, and then whatever our merch is. And so I think that show we made negative $8 each because we had merch stolen from us.
Bad.
So, and I remember after that show, that's so funny too. I was so passionate about music. I want to do music. This is what I want to do. I'm going to school for it. Da-da-da-da. And when we did that show, and then like the next 2 weeks, I was like, I'm done with this. This was my dream. I am done. Like this is the hardest thing I've ever done. It's so disappointing. You got to go out there and in 15 minutes try to win an audience over who doesn't know you. They don't care about, and I don't say that in a begrudging way. They don't care.
No,
I mean, they don't know you.
It's just like a salesman making a cold call.
Totally.
I mean, it's the same concept.
Yes.
You're making a cold call. You're walking out there and you're saying, I've got 15 minutes to tell you why you need to appreciate what we do.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And so it was such great training. One, it was humbling as all get out, but it was also like, you've got to work and life is full of disappointment. And this was out of 40 nights, probably 35 of them were disappointed. There were occasionally, there'd be one where like.
But you would always get that one at the right time.
Yes.
It would always come along at the right time to go, okay, I was about ready to give up, but now I remember why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Totally. Well, and I'm sure you and I could go back and forth on road stories, you know, just the things that go wrong. But like there was one time we did a Texas run. And even the bus drivers for third day, and this is not third day's fault. This was their booking agent. The road manager said, this is the worst routed tour, and I've been driving for 20 years.
Wow.
And so they had us crisscross Texas, but at one point we were in Houston. Then we drove 10 hours west to Lubbock, then 17 hours east to Georgia. And we get to Georgia, and it rained, and it was an outdoor event.
Oh, my goodness.
And when it rains and it's outdoor, and this is before they really blew up. They had an offerings album. It was a worship album that just exploded. Our album actually, Max said, your guys' stuff inspired us to make that album. And so of course, well, thank you. But I wish you would have done the blown up tour when we were on it, you know. But we go and we sing, and it's like right next to a cornfield. There's about 47 folding chairs, and the stage is a foot off the ground. And I'm like, why are we even on a stage? Like, it's just right here.
Expecting a big crowd, too.
Expecting a big crowd of 47 people. We sing, and we've got a little, like, almost like card table for our merch. And all we have is one CD and one T-shirt because we're a new band. Like, we don't have anything. And no one comes over to our merch table, and Alan's at the table. And finally, this little girl, she's like 7 or 8, walks up, hands him a $20 bill and goes, there you go. Turns around and walks away. He's like, no, honey, but do you want a CD or a T-shirt? They're $15. You can pick one. She's like, no, my mom and dad just felt sorry for you guys because nobody's coming over here. And then she starts walking away. And so he runs after her and gives her a CD. Well, then there's this 16-year-old boy who loves Third Day and doesn't get why the piano vocal hymns group is out with Third Day. And he goes, what are you guys doing here on this tour? And Alan goes, well, Mac invited us out here, and, you know, that's why we're out here. Well, nobody here likes your kind of music.
Oh, wow.
And so Alan is the sweetest, kindest, most merciful person. But every once in a while, Dark Alan appears. And
Jesus gets turned around on the counter.
Yes, it is a different face. And he'd had it like with the 8-hour drives and everything else. And he looks at the kid and he goes, you listen to me, kid. You don't have to tell me that. We've been out on this tour for 3 weeks and we've only sold one CD and I had to give it away. I know nobody wants us to be
chase
here.
That little girl down.
So then we had our own show in Indiana Okay, and think about this. We've just gone to Rome, Georgia. 3 days later, we're supposed to be in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Like, it's the worst routed tour.
Oh, goodness.
But we've got our own date in Indiana. People who booked us, they know who we are.
Your music.
We're going to get
Your
paid.
fans.
I
Yes.
mean, and so we're like 5 minutes out. I call, and I say, hey, we're about 5 minutes out. They're like, okay, we'll see ya. And we drive up into the parking lot. And when I look at the church awning, there's 10 people just waving, just ready for us. And we all started crying.
Oh, I
like,
bet.
We're like, I can't believe it's going to be awesome. And they're waving and we're driving up. And then as soon as we get to the awning, they're like, no, no. Our Rent-A-Wreck was 13 feet.
Oh.
The awning was 14 feet, but then the air conditioner on the Rent-A-Wreck was an additional 2. And so we just ripped that awning down. And so that was our first tour. It was awesome.
So our first offering went to replace an awning
Yes.
of the church. Man, that is crazy. But look at you today. The lives you've impacted. A lot of people, though, I think about that. You were talking about opening for Third Day, how people are sitting in the audience going, I'd give anything you would until your second week.
Yeah.
And then you're like, okay, I didn't expect it to be all this.
Yeah.
They just see what's on the stage.
Right.
They don't know what it takes. And I know a lot of people, because I take up for a lot of artists. People will come up and they'll say, well, I ran into this person and they just weren't friendly, or they just weren't who I thought they'd be. And I said, well, just also understand this. You don't know what they've been through just to get here. And sometimes just to get to the date has been a struggle, not to mention what's been going on at home, just to get there. You know, let's give a little grace.
Yeah.
And until you've been on that
absolutely.
road, you don't know that.
Absolutely.
You don't experience that. So, all right. So brag on yourself a little bit. Selah, how many awards? We've done all kind of stuff.
I think we have 12 Dove Awards that we've won. We've probably been nominated, I don't know, 30 times, something like that. But we have, I think, 20 albums. We've had several that have been number 1 on Billboard, the Christian charts, and then the top 20.
That's so cool.
On the overall chart. I think we're about 1 billion streams, and about
That's billion with a B.
billion with a B, yes. And then
that's
there's
B for blessing.
B for
B for a blessing. So if you have Spotify, go ahead.
Please, yes,
look
add
for,
us.
Look for the SELAH attacks or Selah, and
Selah,
whatever,
Sheila.
whatever it looks like. Just go ahead and download it.
Yeah, well, and actually, that's a great point. On Spotify, so Spotify, I think you, Apple you add, and Spotify you follow.
Yes.
Regardless, if you push the button.
Just push whatever button is there.
Anytime we have a new single out, you'll get an email with an update for that. And we're releasing songs about every month. We just came out with this new project called Higher Name. And the first single came out in March. And we've been releasing a song about every month, and then the album will come out in October. And then for anything else that we're doing, you'll be notified.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So anywhere they buy music, they just need to look for you guys because you're there.
Yeah.
You're everywhere.
Yeah.
You're everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I wanted to talk just briefly because I wanted you to encourage some people, because we've been talking road stories and some of the rough patches there, but that still doesn't measure to what you and your wife have been through. And when we got you on the show, I felt like you were going to be able to speak into somebody's life. I've just seen a high school football player who lost his life. I've seen, we had a gospel music family who perished in an airplane crash.
Dear friends.
We've got and it took the lives of young people. We see drownings taking place where it's taking the life of kids. Kind of share with me just a little bit about you and your wife and what you guys have had to walk through to know the pain that some of these families are feeling.
Yeah. We have 5 daughters. We have Ellie and Abby, who are twins. And they really were miracle babies. We never had a problem getting pregnant, but we always had a problem. Angie always had a problem carrying.
Okay.
And so the twins, when she was about 20 weeks, she went into labor and had to go into the hospital on bed rest with major medications to keep the contractions down. And then they were born at 35 weeks, and they're seniors in college. They're amazing, just beautiful women, but they were miracle babies. And then Kate, who is a freshman in college, she was no problem until she was born, and then she was a lot of problems. And no, she's this amazing young lady, and Then, and our fifth child is Charlotte. She's in 8th grade.
Okay,
And
wait, so 3 in college?
So 3 in college and then 1 in 8th grade.
Okay, so that album that you need to go download,
Yes,
because
absolutely.
there are 3 in college, so that album name is Higher Name.
Higher Name.
Yeah, that's
and any merch that we're selling and any concerts, you need to buy tickets.
3 in college,
yes.
Higher Name is what you need to go stream right now.
Oh my word, it's so expensive. We got 3 girls at the time. Charlotte obviously had not been born yet. We go in and find out that we're pregnant with our 4th daughter. And so then we had to come in. That was like at 18 weeks. We come in around 19 or 20 for a second test. And right away, Angie could tell that something was wrong. The technician was looking weird, like just a worry. And so the first phrase out of her mouth is she going to live? And the technician was like, I don't know. And when you're in that situation, that is just complete helplessness. You know, it's just like, what do we do? And so the doctor comes in and he looks, this was our 4th daughter. This is Audrey. And he looks over everything and he said she has cysts on her kidneys. She has a heart condition. Her lungs are, there's something wrong with them. Her kidneys aren't developing because she doesn't have amniotic fluid. And so there was just a list of things that were wrong where basically they said she's incompatible with life. If she doesn't die in the womb, she will, as soon as she's born. And so what do you do with that?
Gosh.
Like that's
heavy.
There's no answer. There's no nothing. And so we went to Barnes & Noble to see if there were any books on child loss. And there really, back in those days, there really wasn't that much. There was more on like losing a pet or maybe losing a parent, but there's very few things on that. And you're just, as a dad, as a husband and a father, I want to fix, and there's nothing I can do, and Angie is carrying this baby that we know we're going to lose. Gosh. And so it was just devastating. And at one point, a couple weeks before we found out, she would always pick a toy animal for each kid. And so Ellie was Ellie Elephant, Abby Gator, Katie Cat, and she sees this bunny in this shop for Audrey. It was like $40, and I'm super cheap. And so I was like, no, we're not buying that. What a waste of money. Well, then we find out that we're going to lose her. And we both at the same time, once we got a second confirmation from the doctor who had saved my twins' lives because they almost were born premature, way premature. We both looked at each other and were like, let's go find that bunny. Like, let's go. So we go. And when we get there, we can't find any. So I'm sweating. I'm just like, Lord, please help me. Like, we need this. And she goes looking one place, and I go looking in this big barrel of stuffed toys, and I see these 2 ears pop out, and I pull it out, and it has the stain right around its heart. And then at the same time, she finds one that's perfect. And when we see each other, I was like, hey, I've got this one, but it's got this mark right here. And she holds up this perfect one, and she's like, this is the one I want. But the one you have is the one that we're carrying. And so she's like, let's buy that one. So we go and buy it. We come home. And Angie's background is developmental psychology. So the way that she was, I didn't know what to tell our kids. Our kids are almost 3, and the twins are almost 5 at the time. And she just sat down by him, and she said, hey, we know that Jesus has decided to take Audrey once she's born. But while she's in mommy's tummy, we're going to live life with her. We're going to experience things. And I want you guys to put these Band-Aids on her boo-boo because she has a boo-boo on her heart. So we're going to put it on this bunny.
Oh, my goodness.
And then we would just take that bunny wherever we went. And she asked, where would you like to go? What would you want to show Audrey? Because we're going to live life while we're carrying her. And my oldest daughter, Ellie, was brilliant because she was always wanted to go to Disney World. She's like, I want to show her Cinderella's castle.
Yes. Yes. Mama Audrey needs to go to Disney.
Yes.
What a play.
And so we did.
That's
and
so good.
Just wherever we went. And so she carried her for about 14 more weeks. And then we were told that most likely when she was born, she might die when she was being born. So Angie decided to have a C-section. And God gave us about 2.5 hours with her. And the girls were able to be with her and hold her. And it was a very just precious time. And then the most painful thing was eventually later that night, early in the morning, giving her to a nurse, who's going to take her and, wrap her and put her in a box, And so it was horrible. It was just that kind of pain. And the funeral, 6 weeks after we lost Audrey, my sister Nicole lost her son Luke to SIDS. And so there was just, you're kind of going, what's next? You know, like is one of my nephews from my other sister, are they going to pass? Or my brother, his kids, or, you know, things just start, it just starts messing with you. And it's really amazing that we didn't divorce because of you take it out on the people you love, you know, and we grieved very differently. You know, she was much more consistent. For me, it would hit me at just different times, you know, in different seasons. And and all that to say, Angie ended up writing a book that really just came out of a blog that she was doing, because we were when we'd go and we did the initial visit, this idea of having to update everybody was just overwhelming and exhausting. And so I was like, you know, what if you start writing on that blog and then we can just send it to friends and family so that they know. And what ended up happening, though, is that so many people have lost kids. And so they said, people started reading it and then sending it to their friends. And eventually she wrote this book and then called I Will Carry You. And so I would just say, too, for anyone who is going through child loss, or if you have a kid, I've had grandmas come up to me, like, my daughter we just found out that her baby's not going to survive. Gosh. It's called I Will Carry You. And so many women have come up to me and said, I didn't know how to put words to my grief, and your wife's words really helped me walk through that. So,
my goodness, that is powerful.
Yeah.
That is powerful, just to know that you had to walk through that. I mean, what do you say to people, though? Because, you know, you have people that will come up and say, I know what you're going through. They don't know what you're going through.
Right.
I know what you're thinking. They don't know what you're thinking.
Right.
But having someone like you that has walked through similar steps, what do you say to people like that? Because you can't, words are not going to fix it.
Right.
But what do you say?
Yeah, a couple of things that I say is, one, you have permission to grieve. You know, if I'm talking to someone who's losing a baby, and they're devastated and they're in shock and they don't know what to do, it's like, grieve it and grieve it fully. And then the other thing is, when you have moments to laugh, you have permission to laugh. Yeah, like, laugh, because everything is so heavy and so intense. And then too, there were certain people we needed to cut off because it was so overbearing, and it was almost like they were taking on our stuff but making it harder, if that makes sense.
Okay, you're going to have to stop there and repeat that, because that's powerful. Because a lot of times we will allow people to speak things over us, and we will accept that because of who they may be in our life, but we're not supposed to live by what they say.
Right, and they might be sucking the life out of you.
Come on.
And so you've got to have boundaries. And even if it's people who are super close to you, you might have to cut them off for a time and just set that, and that's it. And it's uncomfortable and it's awkward, but then you're not dealing with that stress. It's like, I don't know that I don't have the capacity to carry your grief. we're just trying to survive and carry this baby as long as we can. So I would do that. We noticed too, though, that there were people, like, even in one of our church groups, and I loved the church that we were at. They walked with us. They were amazing. But there was one couple, and the husband was a doctor, and the wife was pregnant, and it's almost like she felt like we were going to rub off on her. So she, like, stayed away.
Like it's contagious.
Like it's contagious. So the other thing is, there's a lot of times where people don't know what to say, and so they feel so awkward. They don't know what to say. So I would say to someone who is, maybe you are around someone who is losing a child, or they just lost their child, don't be afraid to ask them, and how are you feeling, or how are you doing? And then let them kind of carry the conversation. And a lot of them it'll be a relief to be able to share about their baby, to be able to share. Just let them talk.
Just let them talk.
Don't
try to
put
fix
words
it.
in their mouth. Don't say, well, Jesus just wanted another choir angel, another baby in the choir. No, we want Audrey with us,
We know that sounds good to you.
Yeah.
But that's not.
It doesn't bring any kind of peace.
Help at all.
And yeah, so that's the thing. I would say ask questions and then just let them talk. And then if you can tell, you'll be able to tell pretty quickly if they're like, I'm just not comfortable talking. Great. Then just be there.
Just be there.
And you can be silent. You know, it might feel awkward, but just being there. Or I think one of the best things you can do, especially if you're organizing food, don't demand that you knock on the door and go inside.
Yeah.
Just feel free to go, hey, would you rather we just drop food off at the front door and ring the doorbell to let you know or text you?
Just be a servant.
And leave. Yeah.
Don't be recognized.
But don't forget them either.
Yeah.
And remember to ask 6 months later, hey, how are you doing? How are you holding up? You know, those kind of things.
That is so powerful. So as a dad now, who has walked through that tragedy, what has that done for your relationship with your other girls?
Yeah, so I think several different things. We were very straight up with them, as honest as we could be. We never tried to yes, you shield them, but really we let them be a part of the process and for them to grieve.
Well, on their level of what they can handle.
Yes, that's a great way to say it. On their level, not to go, hey, we're not going to.
It's not like you're hiding them from it.
Right.
You're just releasing to them what they can handle at the moment.
And being honest with them about, hey, she's not going to live, or them being able to see her, or, being able to talk about it. And I think those things were really important. I think for me, there's definitely the reality of death, that it's real. And so the time that I have with them is very precious. I think, too, on the other side of things, and I'm a pretty carefree person. Like, I grew up in Congo.
Yeah.
We used to hunt antelope and hippopotamuses and, stuff like that. But since Audrey, there's always been, and prior to that, when I was 16, we were in the States, and my dad would go back to Africa for the summers. This is before cell phones, before any way to communicate. So sometimes you wouldn't hear from him for a month and a half. And then finally, when he landed in Belgium or Switzerland, that's when we knew he was alive, that he wasn't killed. So there was always a fear that he was going to get in an accident or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, when I was a sophomore, he got into a really bad car accident in Congo and almost died. And so it was almost like it actually happened, So I sometimes can have a additional fear that something's going to happen to them because of losing Audrey.
Yeah.
And so I always have to fight that, and be like, okay, yeah, you'll be fine on this drive, or you're in college, I know, but you're going to be okay, and, I think just prayer, I think, is so important. I think when you are able to give things, because there's just so much you don't have control over. So you have to give it to the Lord.
Absolutely.
You have to give it to Jesus.
Absolutely.
And ask him to take over and ask him for help. But yeah, with my relationship with my girls, I mean, man, there's sometimes, I don't know about you, but I know who I am.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you would trust me with these 4 unbelievable souls? Like, are you crazy? Like, they're so incredible. How would you allow me that opportunity, and at the same time?
Exactly.
It's like,
and then you're thankful, man, I sure am glad I didn't mess y'all up.
Oh, seriously? Oh, my word. How many times? Now, and here's the thing.
So glad I didn't
told them, we know you're going to need therapy for our parenting.
Exactly.
We know you're going to need it, but you knew you were loved.
Right.
And then I think what's funny is when it's other people who will come to you and say, your kids are so incredible. They're so respectful, or just, she shared such and such. Or sometimes you're like, okay, are they going to follow Jesus? Are they going to love God? And then stuff happens at camp or this or that. And you're like, okay, we did okay.
We did all right.
We did okay. We didn't screw them up completely.
My daughter's like, Dad, do I have a college fund? I'm like, no, but you have a therapy fund. We have been putting back because we know you're going to need it.
Totally.
We know you're going to need it.
Totally.
Well, Todd, your story is amazing. And I always want this show to be encouraging to somebody. I want it to encourage someone that's walking through that. And like I said, it's kind of hit close to home with us as far as with our families and stuff. And I just the encouragement that you offer. SELAH they're touring?
Yeah, we are. We're out doing. If you go to selahonline.com, you'll see different dates that we're doing. We have a full Christmas tour. We have a tour that I believe is going to happen.
We're hoping
that maybe we're on together, which should be great.
Maybe by the time we air this, maybe we'll have the details in the description.
Totally. Just as you were saying this, I was just thinking the album that we're releasing right now, these songs, this is the first time where these songs we co-wrote or spoke into every single song on the album.
Wow.
Generally, I might write 3 and then we're recording hymns, we're recording choruses. But this one, Alan was like, what if we co-write? And we all came from 3 different perspectives. So I came from a perspective just where I was at of just feeling like there's so much spiritual warfare. Mm-hmm. There's so much evil out there. There's so much where I believe that Satan is real. I believe that demons are real, and I believe that they're princes of darkness they're territorial, and they have a mission to destroy. And we can fight back through spiritual warfare, through prayer, through singing. And so a lot of the songs that I chose to write, like Higher Name, are reflective of spiritual warfare or of calling on the name of Jesus, him being the higher name. Then you have Alan, who probably since COVID has lost about 10 people.
Goodness.
Including his mother. And so he has just been through it. And so we have songs about grief and unanswered prayers, just talking about the hope that I have even when the prayers don't go the way that I wanted them to go. And then you have Amy, who has done foster care for the past 2 years, was hoping to adopt, but the child that they had just had so many difficult situations and circumstances. He needs a mother who doesn't tour, because whenever she leaves, he thought she was abandoning him.
Oh my goodness.
Because of how he was abandoned.
Right.
And just some other difficulties. And so there's a song she wrote that she spoke into actually, that we just released, called You Don't Leave Me. And the thing she kept saying at the writing session is, I don't believe God led me here to leave me here. Like where I'm just going to be left and going, what do I do? Like, I thought this kid was going to be my son, and now I have to give him away to another family.
Goodness.
And that just happened. And so walking through, if you're walking through something, I really hope you listen to these songs, because they come from a lot of personal conviction and grief and pain and hope. And so if you're listening, stream those songs, and hopefully they'll really speak to you.
Yes, we're going to have that link in our show description so that you can easily access that and help the college fund at the same time. And I noticed that it was your song that got the album name. So
yes,
did
That's
y'all
how we do
rock,
it.
paper, scissors? What? How did y'all cast lots?
So
did y'all go Old Testament? What did you do?
Right. Alan and I co-wrote that song. And then with another friend named Derek Winkley. And then it was just once we were tracking, that was the first one we tracked. And we didn't have all the album, we didn't have all the album finished. Nowadays, you don't have to have it all finished,
right,
because you can release
just
singles.
do one at a time, yeah.
And so then it was like, let's just call it Higher Name. So I definitely wanted to call it Higher Name. And it's actually nominated for Inspirational Song of the Year at the Dove Awards. So
of course.
What's cool, though, is it's my first nomination as a songwriter.
Oh,
never been nominated as a songwriter. So that was cool. But yeah.
Higher Name. Yeah, My Cut made the title. I just want you to know that. My Cut made the title. Man, Todd, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in and sharing and being vulnerable enough because I know it's going to encourage some people. And we got to have you back.
I'd love to.
Got to have you back, man.
Love to.
Thank you.